Welcome to Creative Piecemeal. I'm Tammy Takeishi, a board-certified music therapist. Join me each week as a new guest from across the fine and creative arts spheres shares struggles, triumphs, laughs, words of wisdom, and more in authentic, thought-provoking, and inspiring interviews. Hello and welcome to Creative Piecemeal. I'm joined by my friend Nikkolas Smith. You may have seen his artwork and illustrations all around the world, actually. He is an artivist, concept artist, children's book author, and film illustrator, as well as movie poster designer. He has illustrated Judas and the Black Messiah, Space Jam 2, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, They Cloned Tyrone. In terms of movie posters, South Side with You, Black Panther Soul, Stranger Fruit. He has Master of Architecture from Hampton University and has written and illustrated picture books such as USA Today Bestseller, The Artivist, The Golden Girls of Rio, My Hair is Poofy and That's Okay, and World Cup Women. He has also illustrated New York Times bestselling books, The 1619 Project, Born on the Water, I Am Ruby Bridges, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, The Courage to Dream, That Flag. He also has Sunday Sketch, The Art of Nikkolas. And we're also here to talk about his latest book, which he did the words and the paintings of, called The History of We. And if you've not picked it up yet, I highly encourage you to do that. It's absolutely beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. So Nick, welcome. I'm so excited to have you back on the show for your second appearance.
Thank you, Tammy. It's good to be here. I really appreciate the time and just talk about art and, what's been going on lately with my books.
Yeah. So I'd love to back up just a little bit for the people who've not had a chance to listen to the episode that we were on together, or this may be their first knowing of you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into art, and then we'll talk about the history of we?
Okay, sure. So if I can back up to growing up in Texas, I was just the type of kid to always make art. I was just, making X-Men that I saw on TV and, sketching and drawing all this different things. But I feel like I was never the type of kid to say like, oh, I want to be an artist when I grow up. I just didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I definitely always been making art. When I was in middle school and high school, those were my art professors. Like basically that was my art education. I tell young kids a lot, like, I didn't go to art school. I went to architecture school. So middle school, high school, that was, the clay sculpting and the, painting on canvas. That was kind of the beginning of it all really for me. And so, yeah, that was it. And even when I got to college, I went to Hampton University in Virginia, HBCU in Virginia. And even while I was studying architecture, I went over to the newspaper and, said like, I want to be a political cartoonist. So I was a cartoonist for the newspaper. And I feel like that was kind of the beginning of looking at all the stuff that's happening in the world and trying to figure out how I can make art about that, or just something interesting that gets people talking about current events through art. And yeah, and then, now at this point, I'm making art all the time for a living, but it took a long time to get to that point.
Yeah. And we've been friends for a very long time, and it's just been so beautiful to see your rise, to see your journey, the fact that you're using your talents and, you're putting out good in the world and you're challenging things and standing up for people with your art. You call yourself an artivist, and I love that, and you've got your newest book, The History of We. Can you tell us a little bit more of how you decided to come up with that and where you're hoping that will go?
Yeah, I do feel like, I'm very fortunate to be able to make artivism for a living. I did have a good chunk of time there where I was doing theme park design and doing the architecture thing. And I just got to the point where it's like, if art is my passion, that's what I should be doing all the time. And so I've been doing Sunday sketches for 11 years now, looking at what I call the broken bones of the world, trying to make art about that. And I feel like along the way, people started to see the art and want wanted in different forms. And that's one of the ways how the picture book thing kind of started for me. And 2016 started, making picture books. And now I'm at my 10th picture book. And so this one is called The History of We. And I feel like in a way, this is a piece of artivism in itself. It is what I call educational justice because the history of we is about the first modern humans 233,000 years ago. And it is about all of us. It's about, your first ancestors, like all of our first ancestors. Everybody in the world can be traced back to this woman on the cover. Really, we can all be traced back to a few traveling tribes out of Africa. But there was, a lot of times, the reason why I call it educational justice is because, when I was growing up in schools, I feel like we kind of skipped over 200,000 years of innovation and, civilization, right? And so we would always learn about and be taught about the cradle of civilization in Mesopotamia and somewhere outside of Africa 10,000 years ago. And so, but modern humanity began 233,000 years ago. And it's called modern humanity because those earliest fossils that were found, which were found in Ethiopia, they had the same skeletal structure as us, they had the same brain capacity as us. They spoke nouns and verbs, sentences, they laughed and cried. They were us. And so all of that kind of like 200,000 years of innovation, even 100,000 years before stepping out of Africa, there were tons of brilliant innovations connected to architecture, astronomy, medicine, exploration, just survival tools, just arts, music, dance, everything. And so I feel like all of that needs to be kind of like inserted back into the discussion in schools and, in communities, everywhere. So very excited to, kind of have this book. It's a book that I've always wanted to make. And then I just felt like, it would be fitting for it to be my first hand painted picture book. I've done digital paintings, this whole time. And I feel like, now's a good time to jump into hand painted and going back to the basics.
Yeah. I love how at the end of the book, you've got author's notes and you've got information about what appears in your paintings, like some sort of background information. How did you approach and prepare for this book differently than ones you've done before?
Well, this one, I call it it's kind of like a National Geographic documentary in a way. It is a slice of history that actually happened. And there are tons of documents and years of research on it all. The Middle Paleolithic era, what we call the Stone Age, and it is a time where, they're paleontologists who have studied, all these hundreds of thousands of years of modern humans, and it is well documented. So there's from the National Library of Medicine, they have documents about the Juniperus Phoenicia plant, right? Where, in Morocco, over 70,000 years ago, they were figuring out which plant they could use to grind into a paste and use for antifungal, anti-inflammatory cream, right? So a long time ago, doing stuff like that we still benefit from today. And, different documents about things like the Ashango bone in the Congo used for a lunar phase counter, or the earliest known artifacts, which are from the Blombos cave in South Africa over 80,000 years ago. So there's so many documents, there's so many books on this, the Middle Paleolithic era. A lot of research done by the Leakey family, Maeve Leakey, who I researched her work a lot. She has books like Sediments of Time. And ironically, once I finished the book, Penguin, who's my publisher, Kokila Penguin, they told me that the book would have to be vetted and approved by the Leakey family, which is the family that I was researching most. And so that was wild. And it was actually very beautiful. They gave their stamp of approval for it, but they also helped kind of refine some dates to say 233,000 years ago, and specific dates on the timeline like that. And I have the timeline in the back of the book. So it was, there's a ton of information there. And I definitely wanted to have that spread in the back that is like, all of the facts and all the receipts, all the figures, so that you can kind of connect like each spread, which is in a way very poetic in a way, but you get like the anchor in the back, which is all of the details and very much factual information about what we did as modern humans and when we did it.
Yeah, I love that. Personally, I love children's books where there's learning. I mean, obviously there's learning, but like this kind of learning, it's poetic, it's artistic, but then you've got like the facts there in the timeline, and it's just presented in such a gorgeous package. I mean, who wouldn't want to gift this to someone? Who wouldn't want to just have it for themselves or their own kids? It's just absolutely lovely. And, you talked about how you were hand painting this. What did it feel like to create this book? Did you feel more connected to your own ancestors? Did you feel more connected to your artistic soul, hand painting it versus digitally painting?
I did all of that in a way that is kind of undescribable, but it's like I was literally mimicking the first artist in the Blombos Cave in South Africa, like the first people to put art on a wall or any and they actually created their own paint. When I'm talking to the elementary school kids, I'm like, they didn't have a store where they could go buy paint. They would literally crush up ochre and all these different rocks and mix it with water and make their own paint. So in a way, it felt like I had that kind of direct connection back to our earliest ancestors, and so it was very experimental for me. I have a few, acrylic on canvas paintings that I've done. And, in the past years, I usually just do it once a year in February. So it was very experimental. These were the most detailed and some of the largest canvas paintings that I've ever done. And so I wanted to just get it, all of that, really that emotion and the every feeling that I feel like, the first modern humans who were trying to advance humanity, everything that they felt, all the joys and the fears and everything went in exploring and trying to survive and all these different things, like get all of that into each brushstroke. So it was very, in a way, it's very therapeutic. But it was very, like I said, experimental, and it was kind of a rush, like to be able to tackle this, and I feel like came out the way I wanted it to. So yeah, it was great.
Excellent. Is there a picture in here or even a line that's one of your favorites from this new one?
I feel like one of the things it's a tiny little line in the back, in the part of the back matter, part of the timeline, where the beginning of the timeline was just like 233,000 years ago. Modern humans emerged in Africa, developing tools and shelter for survival. But then the last part of that sentence is, and the arts for enjoyment. Like that's one of the parts that I feel like is a key to all of this. Like, yes, they developed tools for survival, but also the arts for enjoyment. Like, somebody had to be the first one to dance, and make music and, create, take a piece of wood and make a flute, and all these different things. And so it was fun to be able to kind of reinvent, I guess, that scene and reimagine that scene of like the first musicians and the first dancers, the first fashion designers, they were, the Still Bay people of South Africa over 70,000 years ago were designing necklaces out of shells from the beach. And these are facts. And I just want to kind of show how, these were very creative, inventive, stylish people. Yeah. So like the whole, like the arts for enjoyment is one of the things that is a big key to the book.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you highlight that arts have always been a part of people's lives, and it's really part of survival in a different way. It helps with our mental health. It helps with our hearts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was curious, what do you think you might follow this up with?
Good question. I mean, I do have a couple of books coming up. And then after that, I feel like, I don't know, really. I might jump right back into hand painted, that type of style, or maybe not. It was definitely a lot of work to get this right. I think I will do kind of a hand painted book again. I'm not sure when, but yeah, I do have a book coming up in September called "A Change Is Gonna Come" by the late great Sam Cooke. It is like his civil rights era masterpiece of a song, and really just the lyrics to the song. But I've illustrated a story, kind of a created story that is connected to the civil rights era that kind of re-envisions the song. So that's in September. Very excited about that. And then yeah, another book that's coming out next year, Tammy Charles, it's called That Beautiful Mind, and just about the way that this child who is her child, and how he envisions the world, and how he like makes certain decisions, and how his brain works. So yeah, excited about those, and really not sure yet about the future of what the next book will be after that. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it sounds like some good things coming in general, though. You recently had a small book tour to promote the launch of this book. What is it like to go on the road and to meet people and talk about your books that way?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you've been feeling burned out, stressed, overwhelmed, or exhausted, the resources and courses at the Self-Care Institute are here to support you. The Self-Care Institute was founded by Dr. Ami Kunimura and provides support for individuals and organizations with burnout prevention, burnout recovery, and stress management. I've personally taken a few of these courses and found them to be super helpful, both professionally and personally. The care you give yourself matters just as much as the care you give to others. But if self-care is difficult for you, you're not alone. And the Self-Care Institute is here to support your well-being, resilience, and sense of fulfillment at work and at home. For more information, visit selfcareinstitute.com or go to the show notes and click on the link.
It's been amazing. One of the most wonderful things, honestly, is talking to students. Whenever I will have kind of a stop at a bookstore, usually I'll have a stop at an elementary school nearby beforehand, and to be able to talk to these kids about their first ancestors, and what it's like going back. I will say, like, what is 200 times 1,000, like 200,000. That's like a long time ago. And just to see their eyes open up to think about like how long ago it was that, modern humanity has existed. That's been unbelievable. And, I feel like the whole kind of spark for this book had to do with when I was working on a piece for Ava DuVernay's film Origin that features this kid, Al Bright, from the 1940s, who, he wasn't able to go swimming with his baseball championship class, his teammates, because of racism. He wasn't able to be in the same pool with them, right? So, and that whole idea of like, I wish I could talk to Albright. I wish I could tell all of these, especially like there's a lot of Black kids in America who have a fear of swimming. Their parents, grandparents have never been allowed to swim because of just, racist roadblocks and stuff like that. I wish that I could talk to Albright and all these kids to say, like, do you know like the first swimmers in human history look like you? Like your ancestors invented swimming. And so that it was kind of one of the sparks, and now to be able to speak to, classroom of kids who look like this swimmer right here, and to talk about that is very special. And then just, the folks in the community, like I said, like this book is something that I think the conversation needs to happen in the schools. It needs to happen in the community, and just speaking to everyone about this just important time in our history it's just like that's what makes it all worth it. It's the point of it all, to be able to, once it's done, just share it with the world. And we have like our little Q&A moments at the end, and just talk about, what does it mean to you, and what did you get from it, and what does it make you think of, and where does it take your mind? And hopefully, kind of the big goal is that it can draw us together. It can draw us closer together as one human race, right? Where we talk a lot usually at the end of the little story time, we talk a lot about, like, kind of in a way, how ridiculous it is that there is even this concept of racism, when we're like, and the construct of race, when we're all Homo sapiens, right? Like, we all, some of our ancestors went to a colder climate with less sunlight, and your skin got a little lighter, and some didn't. And so I draw like kind of those migrational patterns in the book, and kind of show what time that happened with certain ancestors. And it becomes like when you look at it that way, it becomes like a very trivial thing. Like, we're all a global family of extended cousins, like, it's just like, there's no point in continuing to split each other up into different races or anything. So yeah, we have some good talks about what it all means.
I was curious, how has your creative process evolved since you began with picture books to where it is now? Are there certain things that you always do, or have things shifted or changed, or is it change with each book that you do?
I think in a way it's kind of stayed the same. I mean, I guess when I'm illustrating, if I'm illustrating and not writing, then a lot of times it is like kind of like taking in the manuscript, maybe it's the poetry, like for 1619 project, Born on the Water, just reading through the beautiful words, and then internalizing that, and then just really jumping into speed painting, speed sketching digitally. It's been, up until this point, kind of just going, like figuring out how to visualize the words, and then jumping in with the speed sketches. And then a lot of times we go back and forth. A lot of times it is like through Zoom or whatever. For the 1619 project, we were on lockdown, so it was a pandemic, so we had to just Zoom and email back and forth. So usually the process is like, the internalization, the speed sketching, and then kind of just get a quick check of like, does this look like the right direction that you were thinking about? And then from there, just continue to refine. And so a lot of times that's how it is for if there's, if I'm just illustrating a book. Writing and illustrating, like for this one or for the Artivist, it usually starts with a particular, like a concept sketch, that is the inspirational sketch. And then I have to go right into the manuscript, like writing it all out, figuring out the story or how I want it to read as you're flipping the pages. And then so I have a little bit of inspirational sketch. I have the manuscript, and then go into the kind of the speed painting and sketching out all of the artwork to go with the words. And so that was, say, for the Artivist, that was kind of that process. And then, but for this one, it was that process plus after. So I digitally painted all of the book for the history of We. And then I recreated, like, I painted my digital paintings. I recreated them by hand on canvas. So it's like just an extra step there. But I wanted to have it digitally first so that I could really see like what exactly what was in my head, and then try to match what was in my head to what is digital, and then the hand painted version. So usually it's like that, but I think there's always for me the digital speed sketch part where I just have to get my ideas out. It's the same thing when I'm working on film projects or a movie poster or whatever. I need to I have a lot of ideas on what I think an art piece is gonna look like, but I have to kind of, once I do the speed sketch, then I get an idea of like, is that what I had in my head, or how can I as close as possible, match what's in my head on the digital canvas.
I just always find it so fascinating the way someone can come up with something from their head and so beautiful. Like I can't draw or paint with beans, but I love like doing like using crayons and stuff. I love that. But to be able, to have books out there inspire others. I mean, it's just, again, I absolutely love the work that you're doing, and so excited for the history of We, excited for kids and the next generations to discover your books and future books, of course. It's just an absolute blessing. A couple more questions for you before we go. One of is, what are things you do to fill your cup when you're not painting and illustrating?
I would say mainly just like spending time with my family. I have a 4-year-old who is about to be 5, and he is just like the light of our world and a ball of energy. And a lot of times it's just like being able to travel the world with him. And even when I'm like, we were just in China I was doing workshops at international schools, and me, my wife, and my 4-year-old, and he was literally like going to the schools. We were there for over a month. So he was going to the schools and just being able to like paint with him and teach him, everything. It's just like a wild experience of like trying to raise a little human. That's pretty much my life, outside of art. And we love doing like road trips and things like that as a family. His name is Zion, and we actually one time drove to like Zion National Park, and we'd do like those types of road trips and things like that. Definitely like being out in nature, that kind of thing. And, just to try to unwind and get away from the craziness of the world at times.
Yeah. And he's so adorable. We're friends on Facebook. I love seeing family photos. He's gotten so tall.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was also curious about, what are some art and music things that you're soaking in right now?
I think I would say, I mean, there's just so many different, I don't know. It's like whenever I am, working on some sort of art piece, I feel like I have to have different types of music, you know, around me, or, listening to certain things, or just like, we have this, me and my wife have kind of like collectively adopted our favorite musician, his name is Bonobo. And he has just like some of the most amazing, I don't even know how to call it, but his music is just, I guess they would say like down tempo or something, but he can like orchestrate like movie scores and do all these beautiful things. And I feel like his music is kind of like the behind the scenes soundtrack to whatever art that I'm making. And so again, with like the family traveling and stuff, like sometimes we'll just, go, sometimes we'll literally like fly to where he is, and just like experience his music in a new part of the world. But it's been fun to kind of like follow along his musical journey as I'm doing my art journey. And yeah, so folks like that, or Niels Fromm, we love experiencing his music. I had a chance recently to work on the concept art for Sinners, which was a lot of fun, Ryan Coogler's film. And that, in a way, is kind of like a musical. So for that one, it was interesting because, I'm concept arting, scenes that have to do with vampires and like Irish jigs and things like that. That was interesting. Ludwig Göransson, who's like a genius and has been like a longtime collaborator with Ryan Coogler, he just created such amazing music for that film. And, to be able to kind of like, I'm visually creating these very musical scenes. And now that the film is out, I'm able to like share some of the art and then put the music with the art, which has been cool to kind of, it's like the full circle moment of adding the final music to the music that was in our heads as we were, concepting the film. That's been a lot of fun. So I feel like, I don't know, I feel like music is just always there as a part of the visual art that I'm creating. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Nikkolas, thank you so much for joining the show. Listeners, please check the show notes for how to follow Nikkolas, how to purchase his books. And as always, thanks for listening and creating.
Thanks for listening to Creative Piecemeal. We hope today's episode left you feeling inspired. This podcast is independently created and produced by the host, Tami Takaishi. More details about today's guest can be found in the show notes, along with links to the podcast's socials, merch store, and ways to support arts organizations AHA Broadway and New Normal Rep, both near and dear to Tammy's heart. Don't forget to visit creativepiecemeal.com, the official podcast website, where you can leave fan mail, write a review, explore Tammy's blog, and discover the growing collection of episodes. Special thanks to our audio engineer, Alex Rapetti. Additional narration by Dante Jace. Let's keep celebrating creativity in all its forms.